After 5 years together, my fiancé's shocking confession about our future. After 5 years together, my fiancé confessed he was uncertain about our upcoming marriage. Then, in front of his buddies, he made a cutting remark. If you were more attractive, I'd have married you already, passing it off as a joke. His mother called me, sobbing, devastated by the situation. Dominic and I have been a couple for just over 5 years, engaged for the past 8 months. We connected at a friend's housewarming party, bonding over our mutual dislike for IPAs and a shared love for 90s cartoons. Our relationship moved at a steady, comfortable rhythm, dating for a year, moving in together after 2, adopting our cat, Beans, at the 3-year mark, and getting engaged last summer. The proposal was simple, nothing over the top, just a hike to our favorite scenic lookout, where he clumsily pulled the ring box from his pocket. I said yes without hesitation. We set our wedding for this October and began planning, though I've been the one handling most of the details while he offered vague agreement. About 3 months ago, Dominic started dropping odd remarks when we talked about the wedding. They weren't blatantly negative, just hesitant. When I showed him venue options, he'd mutter things like, "That's a steep price for one day," or, "Do we really need to invite everyone?" I chalked it up to typical guy nerves or worries about the budget. Then his responses to my wedding-related texts slowed down. I'd send him catering options, and hours later, he'd reply with a curt, "Looks good," or "Your call." When I asked if something was wrong, he brushed it off, blaming stress from big projects at his construction company. It seemed plausible enough. Last month, he started hanging out more with his work friend Paul, grabbing drinks after work or watching sports at Paul's place. It wasn't out of the ordinary, just more frequent. When he came home, he seemed distant, glued to his phone and less affectionate than usual. I confided in my best friend, Lena, who suggested it might be pre-wedding jitters and proposed a date night to reconnect. So, last Friday, I booked a table at a new Italian restaurant downtown, slipped into a nice dress I hadn't worn in a while, and stocked the fridge with Dominic's favorite beer. The evening was a letdown. He was distracted the whole time, barely engaging as I tried to discuss our honeymoon plans. Then he dropped a bombshell. He wasn't sure he was ready, not just for the honeymoon, but for the wedding, marriage, the whole commitment. I was floored. 5 years together, 8 months engaged, and now he had doubts? When I pressed him, he mentioned Paul's warnings about how marriage changes things and brought up Paul's brother's ugly divorce. Our conversation spiraled, with me struggling to keep my composure in the restaurant while my world crumbled. We barely ate, and the ride home was heavy with unspoken tension. At home, he dodged further discussion, saying he needed time to think, and slept on the couch. The next morning was excruciatingly awkward. We moved around each other like wary roommates in a shared space. He mentioned heading to the Rusty Nail, a downtown sports bar, to meet Paul and some work friends for lunch and a game. I was too drained to protest. Later, Lena called, urging me to get out of the apartment. We grabbed coffee, and I poured out everything. She listened patiently, suggesting Dominic might just be grappling with normal pre-wedding nerves. Afterward, we wandered through Target, my go-to stress reliever, where I bought some pointless throw pillows and a new shampoo because, well, retail therapy helps. By early evening, I felt steadier and headed home. As I pulled into our apartment complex, I got a text from Kyler, a co-worker of Dominic's I'd met at the company Christmas party. He asked if I was okay, saying things had gotten weird at the Rusty Nail. I called him immediately. He was hesitant, but after some prodding, shared what happened. The guys had been teasing Dominic about the wedding. And when Paul asked if he was ready to settle down with one woman forever, Dominic admitted he wasn't sure about the timing. When pressed further, he, apparently drunk, quipped, "If she was better looking, I'd be more pumped to marry her," and laughed it off. Kyler said he and others called Dominic out, but Dominic got defensive, insisting they couldn't handle a joke. I sat in my car, tears streaming, for 20 minutes after that call. The man I'd loved for 5 years, who I thought loved me, had publicly mocked my appearance as an excuse for hesitating about our marriage. When I finally went inside, Dominic was sprawled on the couch, passed down his clothes, the apartment reeking of stale beer. I took Beans and retreated to the bedroom, locking the door. Sunday morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and bacon, Dominic's go-to sorry breakfast. He looked rough, hungover, and sheepish, clearly hoping food would fix things. When I confronted him about Kyler's story, his expression collapsed. He tried to brush it off, saying he was drunk and said something dumb to shut up the guys teasing about being tied down. His boys will be boys. Excuse only deepened the wound. We argued as he swore he didn't mean to humiliate me, claiming stress over wedding costs and pressure. But I couldn't move past him using my looks as the punchline of a cruel joke. Unable to stay in the apartment, I grabbed my purse and drove to my brother Elliot's place, my refuge in tough times. When I told him everything, he was livid, ready to storm over and confront Dominic himself. I was able to soothe his nerves by clarifying that I just needed some breathing room and a temporary place to stay while I sorted through my thoughts over the weekend. Dominic kept sending messages filled with apologies and pleas to return home for a conversation. I replied only once, stating I needed space. On Monday, I called in sick to work, unable to handle answering calls at the dental office while acting like everything was normal. Around 9 a.m., I received a call from Valerie, Dominic's mother. We've always had a good relationship. She's been more supportive of us than my own mom, who's living in Florida with her third husband. Valerie sounded distressed, mentioning that Dominic had called her the previous night, and there was something critical I needed to hear. She suggested we meet in person to discuss it. Now, I'm parked outside the coffee shop, where I'm due to meet her in 15 minutes, my mind racing about what else there could be to learn and whether my 5-year relationship is truly over. I never imagined I'd be sharing this story. I keep staring at my engagement ring, questioning if I miss the signs or if things shifted so abruptly. Should I listen to what Valerie has to say? Could anything she tells me make the situation bearable? First update. Thank you all for the incredible support on my initial post. I wasn't expecting thousands of comments. I read as many as I could through tears and stress eating the emergency Oreos from my brother's pantry. For those wondering, yes, I met with Valerie, Dominic's mom, and I'll cover that at the end of this update. A lot has unfolded in the past 2 days, and I'm still trying to make sense of it all. After posting on Monday, I called in sick to work again. My boss was kind about it. I've only taken 2 sick days in the last year, and I must have sounded awful on the phone. I spent most of the morning holed up in the spare room at Elliot's place, which doubles as a storage closet, scrolling through your comments and trying to collect my thoughts. Around noon, Lena stopped by during her lunch break with sandwiches from the deli near the hospital where she works. I hadn't eaten much since Sunday, so even though my appetite was gone, I forced down a few bites. Lena gently pointed out that I couldn't keep avoiding Dominic forever. We share a home joint accounts and would eventually need to talk. She was right, of course. I couldn't stay at my brother's indefinitely, especially since Elliot's girlfriend was coming over for dinner that night. I didn't want to be the gloomy third wheel at their Taco Tuesday. After Lena left, I showered, borrowed one of Elliot's hoodies. It was comforting, no judgment, and drove back to our apartment. On the drive, I mentally rehearsed what I wanted to say. I was determined not to shout or cry, but to stay composed, mature, and get answers. When I pulled into our parking spot, I saw Dominic's truck in the lot, which was odd since he should have been at work. My stomach twisted as I climbed the stairs to our second-floor apartment. When I unlocked the door, I found him on the couch in sweatpants, looking exhausted, surrounded by the wedding planning binders I'd carefully assembled over the past 8 months. Our cat, Beans, was curled up beside him, the little traitor. He looked surprised but relieved to see me. When I asked why he wasn't at work, he said he'd taken personal time, explaining he'd been poring over the wedding plans, trying to understand where he went wrong. I stayed by the door, not ready to sit near him, and told him that flipping through binders wouldn't undo what he'd said. What followed was a long, painful conversation. He apologized again for his comment at the bar, calling it unforgivable and insisting he didn't mean it. When I pressed him on why he'd say something he didn't believe, he admitted he was trying to seem cool in front of his friends, which only fueled my anger. I reminded him of the doubts he'd expressed about our wedding at dinner before the bar incident, even when he was sober. He confessed to feeling overwhelmed by several things: a work project lagging behind, his friend Paul's endless stories about marriage troubles, and stress over our wedding budget. Instead of discussing these worries with me, he kept them bottled up until they erupted in the worst way. As we talked, he revealed something new: fears of becoming like his father. Dominic rarely speaks about his dad, who left when he was 12 after an affair with a co-worker and moved to Arizona to start a new family. Though Dominic always claimed it didn't affect him much, he now admitted he's terrified of inheriting some tendency to cheat or abandon his family. I pointed out that he's not his father, and that genetics don't dictate relationship decisions. His response was revealing. He questioned whether he could truly commit to forever when it seemed so unattainable, given what he'd seen growing up. When I asked if he'd share these fears with anyone else, he paused before admitting he'd been confiding in Kyler, a co-worker he'd grown close to since Kyler joined the company. Kyler had been through relationship issues too, which explained why he'd called me about the bar incident. He already knew about Dominic's doubts. The conversation took another tough turn when I asked what exactly Dominic was feeling. His answer was brutally honest. He felt scared, overwhelmed, and unsure about marriage, despite loving me. He explained that he kept thinking about how his parents seemed happy until they suddenly weren't, and he feared repeating that pattern with us. When I asked why he hadn't shared these feelings earlier, he said he was afraid I'd think he didn't love me enough. The irony stung. By hiding his fears, he created the very situation he wanted to avoid. When I asked if his bar comment about my appearance stemmed from genuine feelings, he insisted he's always found me attractive, recalling specific details about our first meeting at a housewarming party: my green sweater, his awful beer pong skills. He said the comment came from his own insecurities and a foolish attempt to seem in control in front of his friends, not from being trapped. As we kept talking, I asked a pivotal question: were his doubts about marriage in general, or about marrying me specifically? His hesitation spoke volumes. He eventually admitted that while his fears were mostly about marriage and commitment, part of him questioned whether we were truly compatible for the long haul. That hurt more than the appearance comment. After 5 years together, he was still unsure if we were right for each other. When I pushed for specifics, he mentioned how we both evolved since our early 20s. Mine increased. I highlighted how my shift toward careful planning contrasted with my once carefree nature, and how he let go of his ambition to launch a company. Though I explained that evolving as individuals is a natural part of relationships, he wondered if we'd grown in sync or drifted apart. By then, I was emotionally exhausted. I told him I needed distance to process his public jab, his concealed doubts, and now his uncertainty about whether we were truly suited for each other. He begged for us to tackle it together, suggesting therapy or couples counseling, but I stood firm on needing time alone. As I prepared to gather more clothes, he pointed out that my phone had been vibrating. I checked and found 3 missed calls from Valerie. Amid the chaos, I'd completely forgotten our planned coffee meetup. When I mentioned this to Dominic, his face shifted from puzzlement to worry. He asked what his mom wanted to discuss, and I shared that she'd called the previous morning, sounding tearful, insisting she had something urgent to tell me after his call to her on Sunday night. His reaction was striking. His face paled, and he avoided my gaze. When I pressed him on what he'd told her, he vaguely referenced their argument and his reservations, but dodged specifics, making me wary. When I pushed harder, he said it wasn't his place to clarify and urged me to hear it directly from his mom. I stepped aside, called Valerie back. She picked up right away, worried since I hadn't shown for our meeting. I explained I was at the apartment talking with Dominic. She reiterated that she had something critical to share and proposed meeting immediately. Her tone grew odd when I mentioned being with Dominic, heightening my suspicion that something major was being kept from me. After arranging to meet Valerie in half an hour, I confronted Dominic again, demanding to know what his mother was aware of that I wasn't. He finally looked up, his face a blend of guilt and defeat. He admitted there was something he should have told me himself and suggested I speak with his mom, offering to leave the apartment if that's what I preferred. I swiftly packed a week's worth of clothes, toiletries, and my laptop. At the door, Dominic said he loved me, but I replied that love doesn't always suffice. On my way to meet Valerie, Karina, Dominic's sister, called, clearly anxious, asking what was going on between us. She mentioned hearing about the bar incident from Paul and noted that Dominic wasn't responding to her texts, while their mom seemed distressed. When I told her I was heading to meet Valerie, Karina sounded surprised and asked if it was about Maria. The name hit me like a freight train. What about Maria? I asked. Karina's stunned reaction and quick attempt to backtrack revealed she let slip something significant. She apologized, urged me to talk to Valerie, and refused to elaborate despite my insistence. As I pulled into the coffee shop lot, I saw Valerie already seated by the window, her eyes red and swollen, bracing for whatever she was about to reveal. As I approached her table, a nagging intuition told me everything was about to shift. My phone vibrated with a message from Dominic. Asterisk, no matter what Mom says, please know I love you. I got scared and messed up badly. I'll get it if you can't forgive me. Asterisk, I slipped the phone into my pocket, steadied my nerves with a deep breath, and settled into the chair across from Valerie. Thank you all for the incredible support on my earlier posts. Your comments have been a mix of solace and intensity, and though I haven't replied to many, I've read every one and value your insights. I'm typing this from a new spot, Lena's place, after my meeting with Valerie yesterday. I couldn't bear returning to Elliot's or our apartment. Lena's got a pull-out sofa that's a tad comfier than the futon in Elliot's storage room, and her cat, Pepper, doesn't bat an eye when I'm sobbing into my cereal at 2 a.m. The meeting with Valerie. Where do I begin? The coffee shop was bustling for a Tuesday afternoon, filled with students from a nearby community college, their laptops claiming most of the tables. Valerie had secured a cozy corner booth, its high backs offering a semblance of seclusion. She looked different from the last time I saw her at our family dinner 3 weeks ago. Her usually flawless bob was a bit unkempt, and her face was bare, no trace of the mascara or lipstick she always wears. In the 5 years I've known her, I've never seen her without at least a touch of makeup. It's not vanity, just a ritual, like some folks need their morning brew to kickstart the day. When I got there, she rose to embrace me, her familiar lavender dryer sheet scent wrapping around me. I ordered a plain black coffee, though I was craving one of those indulgent caramel drinks pile high with whipped cream. Somehow, ordering something so lighthearted felt out of place for this heavy moment. After some stilted chit-chat, Valerie cut to the chase. Dominic had called her Sunday night, unraveling emotionally. While she recognized his fears about commitment and becoming like his father were genuine, something more pressing was driving his actions. Maria, she said. I nearly choked on my coffee. Maria, the new project coordinator at Dominic's company, someone he'd mentioned casually a few times. As Valerie spoke, nervously tearing her napkin into tiny bits, she explained that Dominic had grown feelings for Maria over the past few months. Nothing physical had happened, or so he claimed to his mother, but an emotional bond had formed, making him question everything about us. I sat there, the coffee shop seeming to tilt as I tried to absorb her words. My mind raced, piecing together a timeline. Maria started at Dominic's company around January. I'd met her briefly at their holiday party in March. By then, Dominic was already acting off, more withdrawn, constantly glued to his phone, spending more time with work friends. What I'd chalked up to stress from his big project now seemed like something entirely different. When I asked Valerie why she was telling me this instead of shielding her son, tears glistened in her eyes. She opened up about her own marriage's collapse, drawing parallels that hit hard. Before Dominic's father left for Arizona with his co-worker, there had been months of coldness, cutting remarks, and contrived fights, all to create distance rather than face the truth. She didn't want me to be left clueless while Dominic took the easy way out. That comment he made at the bar suddenly clicked. Not just a drunken slip, but a subconscious move to derail our relationship, so he wouldn't have to confront his choices head-on. We talked for over an hour. Valerie shared more about her own past, how she fought to save her marriage even after discovering the affair, how she blamed herself for not being enough. As we said goodbye in the parking lot, her words lingered in my mind. The toughest lesson I learned is you can't force someone to choose you. They either will or they won't, and anything less is just postponing the inevitable. I sat in my car for ages afterward, staring at my phone. 3 new texts from Dominic waited there.